We are talking about sanctuary cities. Are they a thing? Yes and no. No and yes. Let's all get on the same page. In April of 2025, the White House issued an executive order called Protecting Communities from Criminal Aliens. The language of this order, with terms like invasion, plenary authority, and lawless insurrection, it's pretty obvious that this was written by the entity wearing a Stephen Miller-shaped human suit.
Sugar. Give me sugar.
This EO required the Attorney General's office to designate so-called sanctuary jurisdictions based on a list of criteria for the purposes of withholding federal funds and taking other so-called legal action against these jurisdictions. This, of course, is unconstitutional, as the executive branch does not have the power to unilaterally withhold congressionally obligated federal funds. This is a violation of the 10th Amendment and Article 1 of the Constitution. So, using this list of criteria, the Trump DOJ designated 12 states, 3 counties, and 18 cities as so-called sanctuary jurisdictions. Let's take a look at the list of criteria they used for this designation.
I declare
sanctuary!
1. Public declarations. Cities, states, or counties that publicly declare themselves a sanctuary jurisdiction or equivalent with the intent to undermine federal immigration enforcement. Okay, so formal designations as a sanctuary jurisdiction are actually pretty rare, and they are largely political and symbolic. The term sanctuary jurisdiction has no legal meaning outside of this executive order full of bullshit criteria. Sanctuary city is not a legal term and has no consensus definition. The term sanctuary city actually goes back to the 1980s, where there was a movement of religious organizations that would use their churches as sanctuaries to protect and shield undocumented immigrants. These organizations were engaging in civil disobedience and were well aware that they were breaking federal law by doing this. When other municipalities began using the term sanctuary, it was largely in solidarity with this movement in spirit, but not in content. So-called sanctuary policies at the policy level are not illegal and are not intended to be civil disobedience. Since then, the term sanctuary city or sanctuary jurisdiction has largely been co-opted by the right as a derogatory term, and conservatives mischaracterize related policies or outright lie about them. So the key word in this criteria is intent. It's important to understand that jurisdictions that make such declarations about being a sanctuary jurisdiction are not doing so with the intent to undermine federal immigration enforcement. They are doing so to protect their communities, comply with the Constitution, and be judicious with their resources, both personnel and financial. Any public declaration of being a sanctuary jurisdiction is inward-looking. It is community-focused. It is not an attempt to stick a middle finger up to the federal government. They don't care about you. They care about their communities, which is what they're supposed to care about. Number 2, laws, ordinances, executive directives. Cities, states, or counties that have laws, ordinance, regulations, resolutions, policies, or other formalized practices that obstruct or limit local law enforcement cooperation with ICE. Okay, this is fun. Local law enforcement is not legally required to cooperate with federal enforcement activities. This falls under the 10th Amendment and what is called the anti-commandeering doctrine, which is judicial precedent that holds the federal government cannot compel local and state jurisdictions to enforce federal regulatory programs. There are no jurisdictions that have formalized policies of obstruction. That would be illegal. Policies of limiting cooperation, however, are completely legal, well within constitutionally granted states' rights, and often in the best interest of the jurisdiction itself, which is probably already stretched thin as it is. Number 3, restrictions on information sharing. Cities, states, or counties that limit whether and how local agencies share information about immigration status of detainees with federal authorities. Okay, again, limitations on information sharing are legal and constitutional. Local and state law enforcement have no authority over immigration regulation, as it is a federal domain. There's no legal reason for local or state law enforcement to inquire about immigration status, and you can't share information you don't have. 4, funding restrictions. Cities, states, or counties that prohibit local funds or resources from being used to support federal immigration enforcement efforts.
Show me the money!
This is just pretty obvious on its face. States and cities have no financial obligation to provide financial support to federal activities. That's plainly ridiculous. 5th, Non-cooperation with federal immigration enforcement. Cities, states, or counties that provide training to city employees and police on enforcing sanctuary policies and declining to respond to ICE requests for information. It is completely reasonable, legal, and even necessary to train public servants in how to execute their own jurisdiction's policies. Just because ICE and CBP don't believe in adequate training doesn't mean training is bad. Sixth, limits on ICE detainers. Cities, states, or counties that refuse to honor ICE detainer requests unless there is a warrant signed by a judge. Okay, so ICE detainers are requests. They are not legally binding. They are not a command. They are a pretty please. And in many cases, complying with an ICE detainer request puts the locality in danger of violating the Constitution and the detainee's Fourth Amendment rights, and it subsequently leaves them exposed to litigation. Seventh, jail access restrictions. Cities, states, or counties that restrict ICE agents' ability to interview detainees absent detainee consent. Again, this one is just plainly ridiculous. No law enforcement at any level has the right to interview detainees without the detainee's consent. This is literally the Fifth Amendment. No one has to talk to law enforcement ever. Eighth, immigrant community affairs offices. Cities, states, or counties that create dedicated offices to engage and advise illegal alien communities on evading federal law enforcement officers. This one is just completely made up. Immigrant community affairs offices and similar organizations do not advise anyone on evading law enforcement officers, as that is a violation of U.S. code. This is a disingenuous mischaracterization. And in plain language, that means it's a lie. The ninth and last criteria, federal benefit programs. Cities, states, or counties that circumvent federal laws prohibiting the provision of federal benefits to illegal aliens and provide them with access to benefits including healthcare assistance, legal aid, food and housing assistance, and other subsidies. This includes cities, states, and counties that establish standalone benefit programs or equivalents. Okay. Again, this is not a thing that's happening. Cities, states, and counties do not have the authority or the ability to provide federal-level benefits, with the exception of emergency medical services, public health, like immunizations, short-term non-cash disaster relief, and school lunch programs. None of these are cash benefits. All of them are for safety and preservation of human life, and the availability of these benefits is based on federal policy, not some local-level trickery. And nothing prevents jurisdictions from helping their own communities by establishing local-level benefits programs. That's not the federal government's business.
Zapatero a tus zapatos.
So as they re-up their promises to fight back against so-called sanctuary cities, the administration once again is using semantic gymnastics and outright lies to smear blue-leaning states and cities who are simply enshrining their constitutionally granted states' rights. Do not give them an inch.